The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
This is Danny Bobrow, President of AIM Dental Marketing, welcoming you to this very special installment of the Practice Perfection web-based education series. Today's presentation is entitled Strategies in Debt Recovery, Proven Methods to Maximize Patient Collections and Reduce Cost and Overhead. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau holds dental practice owners accountable for the actions of third-party service providers. Consumers have filed more complaints with the CFPB against collection agencies than they have against any other business product or service. In the face of increasing regulatory complexity and enforcement, one ignores compliance risk at one's own peril. Today you will learn how to collect more money and increase cash flow with less effort, the keys to maintaining diplomacy with patients during the collections process, how to automatically identify overdue accounts for follow-up, how to launch a flexible accounts collection program which allows dental practice owners to modulate just how assertive an approach to take on a case-by-case basis, as well as ways to validate if your practice management systems are compatible with effective cash flow management. Today's webcast, which presents a singular opportunity to hear from two seasoned professionals about how to address these and other pressing issues in the critical practice areas of collections and cash flow, and which demonstrates how to boost dental team morale by automating challenging systems while also boosting practice profitability, will be presented by David Weiner and Felton Lewis. David Weiner, also known as Mr. Cashflow, is the CEO of Cashflow Strategies, Inc. David has assisted practices and businesses across the United States to maximize their cash flow. Since 2008, he has also provided practices a unique service designed to automate and streamline their accounts receivable follow-up and collections. Felton Lewis is founder of Lab References, a disabled veteran-owned business. Lab References Advisory Group partners with businesses of all sizes to accelerate the recovery of past due collections. As I mentioned, today's presenters are uniquely positioned to offer dental practices insights into what we call the fourth C of the oral systemic practice model. That fourth C being, after clinical, collaborative, and communication, cash flow. The oral systemic practice must achieve and maintain a firm grip and grasp on cash flow because the more elective procedures one offers, the more essential to success cash flow management becomes. Now, before we get started, I want to remind you that Practice Perfection webcasts run for around 90 minutes. While attendees are in listen-only mode, we invite you at any time to submit your questions or comments using the question button on your screen. We will allow time following today's presentation to get your questions answered. Attendance at this presentation entitles you to receive 1.5 hours of continuing education credit. Shortly following the webcast, you will be emailed a brief survey with instructions on how to receive your CE, as well as a link to a recording of today's webcast. Now for the AGD disclaimer verbiage. Participants are cautioned about the dangers of incorporating techniques and procedures into their practices if the course has not provided them with adequate clinical experience to allow them to perform it competently. And it's now my pleasure to welcome to the Practice Perfection stage, first Felton and then David. Hello, Felton.
Good evening. Danny, how are you today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Excellent. So I'd like to thank all the guests, the AIM Dental Marketing attendees today. We put together some great content that we believe that will share some insights and also a personal use case of working with a local dentist here where I'm based at in West Georgia. A little bit about Lab References. I think Danny covered this off, but we're a service disabled veteran-owned business, and we're working with dental providers and physicians, clinics, practice owners. And one of the things that my father, who actually founded Lab References, was keen about is that we have to earn our clients' reference. My background has been in the software industry. I've worked for companies such as IBM and companies that they've acquired, and I always try to take a technology point of view or perspective to any issue that I see that could be impacting a practice. Some of the capabilities that we have in our dental practice portfolio, the one we're going to focus on today is just the accelerating cash flow, accounts receivable management, giving some insights on collections, but also additional services we offer on the payment processing side, recognizing that dentists take many different methods of payments. We're a reseller and also a provider of Clover, which is a point of sale terminal that has been introduced in some dentists. Also wellness education, helping employees make better decisions and become wiser users of the options that they have, legal plans and disability programs. Disability, the quick call out there is just from an income protection point of view, being able to keep the revenue that you're able to make every year in case there is a disability. We introduced my colleague, David, at the top, so I'll just leave this chart up for a few seconds. But David has been a great coach and mentor for me. He's been an independent contractor with TSI for almost a decade. He spent a decade as a practice administrator as well, a CEO of a medical billing company, and just a wealth of insights on how to drive profitability within the practice. Some of the discussion topics that we've teed up for today, hot topics and effective strategies, that'll be the session that I'll be covering. Should go no more than 20-25 minutes, and I'll be turning it over to my colleague, David, who will be stepping through the rest of the agenda. This first topic, compliance and data security, are essential. Nothing more devastating to a dental practice than declaring a breach. And one of the things that is unique about Transworld or TSI now is the certification that they've received for PCI compliance. And it's the highest level certification that you can reach, and it's the same processing standard that's held by all the major banks and the credit card companies. Many collection companies could operate in like a cloud environment, but if the data center that is in that environment has not reached their certification, there's a potential and an exposure potentially to a breach. I did note that there was a dentist in California whose server was stolen. That's an obvious breach of data, but there's other less conspicuous ways of a breach occurring. For example, copying patient records and a former employee leaves the practice. And what we found out at IBM is that the weakest link in a network is sometimes the access that you're providing to third parties. Is your collection agency putting you at risk? This is just a data point regarding it being a highly regulated industry. As Danny shared at the beginning of today's webcast, a data point for me that I thought was interesting, I learned from David, is that 60% of the phone numbers that patients are giving are their cell number, and there's a different communication protocol you have to follow when you're contacting someone on a landline versus a cell. And there's numerous laws that are designed to protect consumers. There's also some discussion underway about some changes that the new administration may be making. But the key takeaway for this chart is that if there is a breach, 54% of patients say they would be moderately likely or very likely to change doctors following a data breach. So if you think about the seriousness of this item alone and the impact to the revenue stream, and I think it's a topic that as consumers, we've all probably received some form of a 2-year protection because there was a breach at Equifax or a breach at your local bank. This number on the average cost of a data breach, it'll come back in the continuing education unit questions that are asked there, but $4 million is the average cost of a data breach. IBM estimated that to be closer to 7 to 8 million. And if you look at that second row chart at the very bottom, 26% of data breaches were due to IT systems and process failures, which I thought was interesting. And this was a news release regarding a data breach at a dental practice where 151,000 patients' personal identifying information was exposed. A notification rule was introduced recently, and it impacts not only the dental practice, but also their third-party service providers. So this is my attempt at humor. Somehow your medical records got faxed to a complete stranger, and he has no idea what's wrong with you either. But the seriousness of making sure all your service providers have reached this level of certification is a definitely call out. What steps should you take if there is a breach? Well, there's 3 things you have to do. One is you have to notify all your patients in writing, and you have to inform them of what data was breached, so what information was actually exposed. And then dentists that have had practices that have reported a breach, typically the loss of revenue or patients is about 25 to 40%. Also, you have to notify the local media, so a lot of negative press at that point. And then you also have to list your practice in the wall of shame that's on the Health and Human Services website. I did some research ahead of this broadcast, and there's currently about 1,300 practices that are listed on this site for having a breach. Questions to ask your current agency or your service providers. And I think this is probably a good time, because as you begin to finalize your plans for 2018, and you have an opportunity to take a look at where there could be opportunities to build new relationships or inspect the existing relationships, these are some questions that me and my colleague Danny came up with that you can ask your current provider. And I think the key one is that, are you PCI 3.2 compliant standard? There's investments you have to make to earn that certification, and some companies just don't feel that they need to make that investment until, unfortunately, there's an incident, and then you spend $4 million trying to correct the incident. Research that we pulled together on path to purchase, there's some key findings on when you open up opportunities to finance some of the procedures that you guys are offering. 2 call outs was the 29% of all respondents indicated that they would be likely or extremely likely to apply for and use care credit for fees of only $200. So if that sets the bottom, if you will, that's when consumers are looking to maybe finance. And I think more important is 39% of patients said they would not have had any dentistry work done at all if it wasn't for financing. So when you get into implants, you get into dental restoration, I think you typically see a higher ticket value on that. The source of this was the Care Credit Path to Purchase research. 3 effective strategies. We wanted to comment on things that we see in the industry that are best practices, in our opinion: faster dental debt collection recovery. And I think the most important role when it relates to collections is whoever is handling that interface with the customer or the consumer, the dental office manager or the practice manager. And I actually have an actual use case study that I'll share in a few charts of a great outfit here in Atlanta, Georgia, and some of the best practices that they have. A takeaway from this chart is, do you have a financial policy statement where you clearly explain, right, that you're looking for the patient to take care of their obligations? And I think Danny can help us there and kind of share a point of view on the content that should be included in the financial policy statement. So strategy 1, educating patients on the billing process in advance, is just taking a proactive measure to take a look at the customer's dental insurance and what options they have, and then coaching them down the path. Also sending invoices as soon as the account is due. The 30-day billing cycle, in our opinion, is something that can be improved upon. And then when you're calling and following up, we have some techniques that we'll introduce regarding how to have that conversation. So many times, if you stay in control of the conversation, we believe you'll get a better outcome. So maybe perhaps verbiage changes. How much can you pay? Maybe ask that question of how much are you short? That just conveys that you're looking to recover 100% of the amount owed. Instead of when can you pay, right? Maybe a progressive question of how will you be paying? And instead of asking the question of how much can you pay per month, most people are competing against utility bills, AT&T bills, service bills, asking how many installments will they need. So that still sets the expectation that you're going to recover all that is due. Strategy 2, even providing payments and incentivizing early payments could be a great practice to introduce. Reward the patients who pay early by discounting a small percentage off the bill. Depending on the size of the work that was done, that could be an option as well. Strategy 3, avoiding insurance disputes. Many times, and we just went through open enrollment at a company that I work for, and typically I would say there's less than an hour of education given to any employee when you go through open enrollment. And I thought about this from a different angle. I said, well, who's in the best position to tell me what my dental forecast is likely to be in 2018. And I made a mistake this year when I put in my health savings account, only set aside $3,000. And I thought that would be enough mainly for dental. And we exhausted that probably in about 2 or 3, visits to the doctor. So I think being able to proactively forecasts and help companies, not help companies, but help employees as they go through open enrollment, possibly projecting what will 2018 look like based on what you understand that needs to be done. It's a great benefit because most of the time employees are guessing at what amount they need to be deposited in a health savings account. So in my opinion, there's a great opportunity to influence that.
I think that's a great point, Felton. And if I could just elaborate briefly on it, so often in our capacity as marketing consultants, we review both verbal and written communication for our clients, and I think often they're confusing the policy and the responsibility with the communication. Yes, we know that it's ultimately the patient's responsibility to pay whatever is owed that the insurance company fails to cover, but there's a real opportunity to distinguish yourselves favorably from your colleagues down the street by gladly, happily offering to help them communicate with the insurance company to help confirm, determination of benefits, instead of saying it is your responsibility, which also implies, and therefore you are responsible for getting the information and doing all the work. That's an important distinction. Every chance you have to step up and act on behalf of your patient, and especially your prospective patient, is an opportunity to get them to see that they can trust you and that you're standing out from the competition. So just wanted to underscore that point in this context, because yes, it's the patient's responsibility, but I think you have an opportunity to distinguish yourselves by helping them understand that responsibility, as Pelton just shared.
Absolutely. Great point. When a patient owes you money, as we are ready to transition, I'm going to share a personal use case of a great practice that I'm engaged with here in Atlanta. This is interesting. Each time you contact the patient, whether that's through email, whether that's through phone call, if you look at the labor effort involved, it costs the practice about $10 to $12 per contact. And this was according to the Medical Group Management Association, and Danny has frequented those events. Be proactive, act quickly and frequently, and use new approaches to address the 4 payer types. Danny's going to do a great job of explaining these unique payer types and how you can actually come up with a strategy for each payer type. My father's background was in the insurance industry, so he embedded this art of managing risk model at a young age. It actually works on report cards. If my father was to tell me that he didn't want to see a C or anything worse, or he was going to apply the art of risks to me using cowhide, it does a great job. Trust me, I skipped from 2nd grade to 4th grade after bringing home a C. But the net is accept risks, avoid risks, reduce risks, and transfer risks. A personal case study, I'll end up on this, only 4 charts to go, and I'll be turning it over to my colleague. But West Georgia is a practice that's about 20 minutes away, sits about 20 minutes west of Atlanta. And this is underscoring the value, in my opinion, of a practice and an office manager that's clearly hitting it out of the park. So Lisa was the practice manager at WGE, and she told me she does not like surprising her clients. And she said the worst thing that can happen is after a procedure to find out that they don't have enough money or there wasn't enough money set aside. So she contacted Principal Life to understand my coverage even before I had my appointment. She called to review my portion of the bill before my appointment. She shaped an expectation that if you had a root canal, this is what your exposure will be, or this is what we're looking to collect. And then she advised me on how best to allocate the dollars that I had remaining in my HSA for the year. And she gave me some suggestions on what I should budget for next year. She has a decade of experience outsourcing collections to TSI. 2 or 3 things I want to leave the audience with is invest in your website and look at it as a tool to educate your patients. This is exactly their website, but if you look at some of the tabs, and I don't have the ability to put a cursor there, but the services you offer, also the appointment requests, if you think about the amount of time that's consumed, just scheduling an appointment when your customer is busy, or as I do, I travel 2 or 3 times a week. And then look at the opportunity to have your portal or your platform or your website actually be patient education. So they go back to you and your brand your name stands in front of them consistently. Another we just talked about was the appointment requests. But if you look to the right of this, it's all the things on patient education. So I don't need to go to WebMD. I can go back to my provider who, in my opinion, they're a trusted advisor. And as it relates to being I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I just want to, again, just chime in briefly to underscore that those points, there's no reason to abdicate. One of the goals is to be a trusted advisor. It's the exact terminology that I use, and it's not that difficult. It's just a matter of letting people know and reminding them that the resources are there, and also bringing the website to them. And that's called a lead nurture campaign or a drip marketing sequence, which we offer our clients. It's an automated process so that you can sort of set it and forget it with the confidence knowing that you're communicating valuable, timely information to your patients without hoping that they're going to come to your website. And what you're showing here, the online appointment request is great. It gives people the opportunity to have an option of connecting with their office. There are also, and this is germane in the context of data integrity and security, there are online patient scheduling platforms now, not simply appointment request platforms. And I know dentists understandably are concerned about losing control of their schedule, but you don't lose control of your schedule. You specify what type of patient can and cannot schedule an appointment online. And there are also patient forms that can be completed online that are digitally encrypted. They're HIPAA compliant and they're digitally signable and encrypted, which is another excellent way to differentiate you from your competitors. Gone should be the days of asking your patients to come in 15 minutes early to sit in your waiting in your reception area with a clipboard and a stack of papers that you then have to take from them and manually scan into your system. That can all be automated. Anybody who's interested in that can certainly just reach out to me and talk about it. But the key is this does not expose you to risk if you use a reliable, encrypted, SSL compliant platform.
Excellent point. When I worked with Blue Cross of Tennessee and Blue Cross of Florida, the business challenge we were trying to solve was how to get out of the paper claim business. And we were able through EDI to pass documents electronically. But for building the business case internally for them to adopt this technology, it came out to about $53 was the cost to process a paper document versus an electronic document. So to your point, Danny, having all your connections being secure, being encrypted, and being able to integrate with other applications and systems, it only increases your cash recovery time. If you're sending a paper document through, somebody has to scan it, there's an issue with one or two fields, it falls off into a queue for someone to follow up, you can lose 30 to 60 days easily, even before explanation of benefits is published.
Yep, and you're quantifying it, which is excellent, because you're not only saving time, but time is literally money, and it's frustrating too. It doesn't help morale either. So, streamlining the process is good for so many reasons.
Yes, sir. The last, in my personal opinion, if I was to buy a product, and I know many of us are familiar with Amazon, we love Prime delivery, it gets there in 2 days. But would I trust an Amazon review or would I trust the dentist practices review? I think hands down, I'm going to trust the dentist. If a dentist makes a recommendation between a sonic device or a water pick, and I think that's an opportunity on your website to bring people, as Danny mentioned, getting the eyes and the traffic back to your website. If there's 2 or 3 products that you've tested out, you validated, then you become the trusted advisor, and we don't have to rely on the marketing claims of manufacturing. We can actually rely on the practitioners that you all are. So I want to finish up this because I'm 50 years old and I've never quite had this experience that happened this week. And I set the expectations around this practice. The office manager did an incredibly good job of shaping expectations with me, going back, looking at my particular dental plan, and this receipt, I said, this is interesting. I've been to a lot of dentists in my life, but I will say all receipts are not informational. And when you look at this particular record, I might be able to increase it just slightly. But it has, of course, the information regarding the patient. But if you see, there's next action steps or next recall steps or next appointment steps. And I thought that was just excellent. And in my 50 years of living, Danny, I've never experienced this where they sent me a check. Now you talk about a happy client. I'm scared to open mail from West Georgia because I'm thinking, okay, the insurance company didn't pay. How much do I owe? But in this particular case, she shaped such beautiful expectations that even when she took the $60 for my visit, it eventually was not needed, and she refunded that. So that's the first time I've opened mail in my life where I wasn't expecting to see anything but a bill, and I got a check. So I'm going to celebrate this one.
That's a great example. I've often said that the best marketing in the world is a check in the mail sent, whether that's, and you can't do it legally in the context of medical, but you know, if you just can offer somebody a gift, an acknowledgement for some sort of support, and if it's unexpected, it's all the better. So great illustration, Felton. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. That's the end of my presentation and turning it over to my colleague. Thank you all, and hopefully some of those were good insights.
You're very welcome, Felton. And yeah, let's keep the ball rolling here with Mr. Cashflow. David, take it away.
I appreciate it, Danny, and thanks, Felton. I just want to say how grateful I am to be able to share the things that I'm going to share with you. I've been in the business of healthcare for a long time. I ran a practice for 10 years in the 80s and have been doing medical and dental consulting since then. And what I want to share with you is something that I came across about 10 years ago that caught my attention immediately, and I believed in it so much I affiliated myself with the company. You know, years and years and years ago, we knew we were going to write off patient balances because the insurance companies paid almost all of the bills, and the patient balances weren't that very much, but it wasn't really a big deal for us. Right now, today, according to me, Forbes, CNN Money, and the American Collectors Association, it is harder to collect money from patients right now today in 2017 than it ever has been in the past. And there are some reasons for that. We know right now today, 1 in 3 people in the United States have an account in collections somewhere. Those people that owe you money also owe a bunch of other people money as well. And so where you fall in that list of bills is going to be very, very important. The sad news is that last year in the United States, collection agencies recovered just 12.8%. If you're talking about medical or dental debt, it's actually less than 10%. And I've worked with a number of different practices that have told me, boy, I'd be really happy if my collection agency was collecting 10%. But that's really pretty sad. You may very well be aware, and I'm sure that you are, that regulatory compliance right now is more complicated than it ever has been. HIPAA affects us all. The collection regulations, the Fair Debt Collections Practices Act, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, and all the others, which were once designed just to regulate collection agencies, now also cover what your employees are doing on the phone with patients. And you need to be aware of what those rules are so that you're not just accidentally non-compliant by the way that you talk to patients on the phone. And this is the one that floored me. The average U.S. consumer right now has 12 active creditors. So you think about that. There's a stack of bills on their desk. They're going to pay some of them, and maybe they won't be able to pay all of them. You know, if they get your statement the same day they get a statement from, say, Verizon Wireless, that they're going to pay their cell bill because they know if they don't do that in 30 days, their cell phone's going to go away. So the whole idea is something has to be done that makes you as squeaky a wheel. You can't really repossess dental work, so we've got to come up with a different idea. And you really can't afford to wait. The U.S. Commerce Department did a study a couple of months ago, or a couple of years ago, on the depreciation of accounts over time. And this isn't just dental practice accounts or medical practice accounts. This is all kinds of accounts. But the longer you wait, the less collectible that bill is going to be. And it starts right away at day one. By the time it hits 90 days old, it's depreciating at 1.5% per day, 7 days a week. By the time you get out to 120 days, 4 months, or even 6 months, which is where a lot of practices have traditionally considered bringing in somebody to help them collect the money, at 120 days, half of that money is no longer collectible. At 6 months, over 70% is no longer collectible. What that's telling me, and what that ought to be telling you, is that 30-day bill cycle that we always relied on is dead. It doesn't work anymore. We've got to change with the times. We've got to innovate a little bit and come up with better ways to collect money. I'm fully with Felton that collecting up front is always the best, but you know and I know that's not always possible. Our best determination of what insurance is going to cover doesn't always work. Claims are denied, that sort of thing. And so something else has to be done. And I want to show you what I came across. Back in the 80s when I ran a medical practice, I believe that there were two kinds of patient payers, the ones who did and the ones who didn't. We've discovered over the years that all payers aren't the same. There are actually 4 distinct types of patient payers. You deal with all 4 of them probably every single day. But the big deal is they all require a different approach to motivate them to pay you, and it's a mistake to treat them all the same. It's also very, very difficult for your staff in the office to know who's who. So just for the sake of discussion, we gave them names: the dutiful payer, the distracted payer, the disrespectful payer, and the deliberate non-payer. And you'll probably start thinking of names as we talk about them of people in your own practices that you know. But here's what makes each one of them pay, or what motivates them to pay. Your dutiful payer, as soon as the insurance is cleared and you send them a patient statement, they're going to pay you immediately on receipt. And you know who those people are. Fortunately, it's the bulk of your practice. And you can count on them. It's like clockwork. As soon as they get a statement, they pay you. The distracted payers, which unfortunately I tend to fall into this category sometimes, they fully intend to pay you. Their hearts are in the right place. They just can't remember what they did with that statement you sent them. And so all they really require are some nice gentle reminders, and they will get you paid. Your disrespectful payers are the ones that are going to hang around and wait until they hear from a third party, like a collection agency or an attorney, to know that you're serious about collecting the money. And the dirty little secret of the collections industry has always been that 85 to 90% of the money that's collected by collection agencies in the United States is collected on the very first contact. Now, in the United States, by law, that first contact has to be a letter. So what has happened traditionally with the percentage-based collection agencies is you work the account as hard as you decide to work it in the office. When you finally throw your hands up in the air and say, you know what, I'm just not going to get this, and you turn it over to a percentage collection agency, they send out that first letter, which they're required to do by law, and from that letter, they collect 85 to 90% of the money that they're ever going to collect, and then they charge you somewhere between, say, 30 and 50% of the balance just for sending out one letter. That's kind of crazy if you think about it. And so back in 1970, the whole concept of fixed fee collections was invented by Transworld Systems with the idea that if we know we have to use the mail and it works, and we know what our expenses are going to be, why can't we just charge a simple fixed fee instead of a percentage? The practice gets to keep a lot more of their money. We collect a lot, and everybody's happy. So that's how the disrespectful payer is handled. Everybody sees a few deliberate non-payers who never do intend to pay you when they come into the office. Those are really the only ones that require the professional collectors. So what Transworld Systems did was they invented a 4-stage approach to your entire accounts receivable. So the dutiful payers, not a problem. They're going to pay your first statement, and we don't even have to talk about those. what we recommend is 30 days after that statement goes out, if they haven't paid you, we know there's something distracting them. And rather than you sending an identical statement to the patient, which they may recognize and throw away, we suggest at TSI that you use a program that they call TSI Accelerator. And I'll explain that in just a few minutes. If they don't recover the money, if the money's not paid during the TSI Accelerator phase, then we would move it, and in the accelerator phase, they're contacting that patient in the name of your practice. So the patient never knows that anybody else is involved with it. They just think you got really good at following up on their bill. If it's not paid during the accelerator phase, they would move it into a phase called profit recovery. This is where your third-party impact comes in, because then the patient receives 5 contacts from Transworld Systems as a licensed collection agency. These 2 phases both cost a fixed fee that average right around $12 per account, no matter what the balance is. And the vast majority of accounts will get collected in these 2 phases. And only the few that make it to the end of profit recovery, after ignoring your practice 6 times and a licensed collection agency 5 times, would then go into full collections. And I'm not surprised to say, but I'm pretty pleased to say that after 37 years or 47 years in business, Transworld Systems is now the largest collection agency in the world. So here's what it looks like. For your distracted accounts, 30, maybe 60 days after you've sent your first one, or after patient responsibility, after you've sent your first 1 or 2 statements, Transworld Systems will make 5 polite reminders in your business's name, in your practice's name, over the next 35 days. Again, it's a fixed fee cost. It's actually a sliding scale that runs from $6 to $16 depending on your volume. All the money comes directly back to your office and you keep it. So Transworld does the work, but the reminders are coming from you. So this gives you kind of a visual representation. I know these letters are very small, so I'll tell you what they say, but as soon as you move an account into the accelerator phase, they're going to receive a letter, just like this one. Your name and address are at the top as the return address. The guarantor information and the account information are here. And it says, "Dear James Debtor, thank you. We sincerely appreciate your trust in us as your healthcare provider. Unfortunately, the above referenced amount is now past due and requires your attention. Please remit your payment with a lower portion of this letter in the envelope provided, or provide us with your insurance information if you've not already done so. If you feel there's an error, please contact us as soon as possible. We really want to help resolve your past due account balance. Our staff is ready to assist you at the number indicated below. Thank you for your desire to cooperate in resolving this matter. Again, your name, address, and telephone number are right there, and we give them a tear-off payment voucher to send back in the envelope we provide them, and it comes right back to your office. 7 days after this letter, if they've not responded, they're going to get an automated telephone call that says, "Hello, this is not a telemarketing call. This is Dr. Smiles' office calling regarding your account and a letter we recently sent you on November the 30th. This message is for James Debtor. Please contact us at your earliest convenience at the practice's phone number and refer to your account number, 12345, whatever it is. Again, that's Dr. Smiles' office at the practice telephone number." And then it says, "If you'd like to speak to us now, press 1. If they push 1, it rings the practice number. They can take a payment over the phone. 7 days later, if there's been no response, another letter will go out identical to the first one, but it says, "This is our 3rd attempt to contact you." 7 days later, another automated telephone call referring back to this letter. And the last thing that they see in the accelerator phase is a final reminder notice that says they have 10 days to pay the bill or to make acceptable payment arrangements, or the account will be assigned to Transworld Systems, a licensed collection agency. All of this happens on any account that you decide you wanted to, for a fixed fee that averages about $12. You keep the rest of the money. I'll show you just basically the results that Transworld has seen on this accelerator phase. And specifically, our dental practices, about 5,000 of them nationwide, we're recovering during that first 30 to 35 days, 82% of the invoices that are given to us to recover. So it works out to an average cost of about 4.5%, and for every dollar that the doctor invests, we return on average about $22.18. I've done consulting for a long time in dental practices. I have yet to see a practice that was collecting 82% on the bills that are between 30 and 60 days. Probably would if they had the staffing to contact that patient 5 times during that 30 days, but face it, nobody has that kind of staffing. You just can't afford to keep that many people on staff. For the disrespectful accounts, notice it looks a little bit different now. The size changes back and forth. That's to get the envelopes open so they don't recognize them. And most of the payments in the profit recovery phase come on the first demand. It's that third-party impact we talked about. Again, it's the fixed fee per account, no percentages. Starts with a courtesy notice, goes all the way to the final demand. And as nasty as this demand gets, it says there can be possible consequences connected with non-payment of a legitimate debt. Unless timely payment is made, we may recommend to our client that this claim be transferred to our team of professional telephone collectors. During this phase, we're collecting a good bit more of those accounts. Plus, TSI will do something that no other agency that I'm aware of in the country will do. When they pay during the profit recovery phase, they send a thank you note to the patient on the behalf of the practice. It says, we've been notified that your above referenced account has been paid. The creditor has requested that we extend their thanks for your cooperation in resolving this account. Your relationship is considered a valuable asset, and should a future need arise, our client services are at your disposal.
It's a very, let me jump in for a second, David. That is a really excellent way to tie a bow on something that otherwise might not look or smell so nice, which is a relationship. Right. And in this way, it's like all is forgiven. We welcome you back at any time.
We still love you.
If this isn't right, if this isn't done, the person is embarrassed to show their face, quite possibly again, right. And they think,
and it serves that purpose. It also is great for word of mouth on the street, which is very vital, and it serves to them as a receipt, which everybody's going to want to get once they go to a collection agency if they pay it.
Yep, and it's closure in a positive way.
I know practice managers. Yeah. And if you're anything like I was when I ran a practice, there may be 1 or 2 of them that you really don't want to welcome back into the practice. So that
was going to be my next question. That's why it's an option.
They make this letter optional by patient.
Mm-hmm.
So you can decide who you send it to and who you don't send it to, or you can send it to everybody if you really want to. There's no cost for it. It's part of the service, but you have control over this as well.
Excellent.
There was a chart I intended to put in here, but it's missing. I wanted to show you that in general and cosmetic dentistry, in the second phase, we are collecting about 56% of what's left during that phase, and that phase runs for 60 days. This is the best part of all, and I like to save this because this is unlike anything else you'll see. TSI provides a non-invasive interface that works with 95% of all dental software. And this is just a small smattering of the practice management software that we work with. It goes out each morning at 2 o'clock in the morning and reads your database and identifies for your practice the patients who meet the criteria that you choose as delinquent patients. So what we do is we will install on your computer an interface called Transworld or Dental Collect Enterprise. This is the control screen. So when you first get started in conversation with Felton or myself or any Transworld representative, you decide when somebody is qualified to be sent to us based on the number of days past due and the number of dollars that they owe. We get that all set up ahead of time for the 3 different services. And then when your staff comes in the morning, back when I was running a practice, I used to have to pull an accounts receivable aging report, get out 3 or 4 colored highlighters, and spend a few hours going through every account, marking them what I wanted to do with them, whether I wanted to send them to collections or send them a collection letter, or whether I wanted to make a phone call or whatever. Here's what happens. They come in the morning and they open up the Dental Collect Interface on the decision screen. These are all of the accounts that meet the criteria that you decided on to be sent to TSI. It shows their ID number with you, their total balance, if there's still any insurance pending, if you've sent them to TSI before and for how much, what the guarantor owes now. There's the date of responsibility, the date of last service, and the date of last payment, and their account type. So your staff simply goes through this list and says, okay, this person owes us $100 since May. If they decide they want to send them to us, they go here to pending, drop that down, and they have a choice of send or not send. If they click send, the account will be sent to us securely, no risk of HIPAA violations in copying and faxing or copying and mailing or all of those different things. They simply work their way through the list each day or every other day, and there will only generally be a few accounts on there. And so they mark them send or not send. The reason that they would not send somebody in general is, one, they still have insurance pending for some reason. Two, they're already on a payment plan and they're current. Or three, it's the doctor's sister or a hygienist or an employee or whatever, and you just don't want to send them to us. But they choose each account, they click a button down here, and they're done. Now, because in Accelerator and Profit Recovery, the patients pay the practice directly, we need to be notified, or TSI needs to be notified of the accounts that are paid so that we stop sending things to them. So every morning when this refreshes against your database, it also will notice any payments that were posted into your software for patients that have been sent to us already. And they'll show up here in the bottom pane to report payments. They mark those send, they click the button, and they're done. Realistically, instead of the amount of time that they're spending on their patient AR now, this will take it down to probably 5 minutes a day. And that's all the time that they would need to spend on their accounts receivable. So not only are you getting more action on the accounts, you're also saving your employees staff time, money, gives them the ability to focus on more important things like insurance verification or insurance claims or the current things, dealing with patients, that sort of thing, and let the experts take care of following up and collecting the money. We also provide every practice with an online client portal. Now, because there's an interface for you, you wouldn't use it for submitting accounts, which is what this is showing, or for posting payments. But what you can do is you can go onto the portal and you can track every account that you've sent to Transworld, find out where it is in the process, see every time we've mailed a letter, every time we've made a phone call. We also give a report generator that will allow you to print financial reports, detail reports, change of address reports, you name it. And before I go a whole lot further on this, I do want to just talk a little bit about, touch on something that Felt talked on before, and that's security and compliance, and also data analytics. As far as security goes, I was telling Danny earlier that Transworld Systems employs more people in their compliance department than most collection agencies employ entirely. We have over 80 employees in our compliance department. It is very, very important to us. Felton touched on the compliance rating that we've got. And so we guarantee our clients 100% compliance. You don't have to worry about whether or not your data is going to be secure with us. Security, all of our data is backed up at the SuperNap facility in Nevada, where the U.S. government backs up all of their information. In fact, Transworld Systems also collects for the U.S. government, and so we're required to have the PCI 3.2 as well as very, very, very secure backup. So your data is secure with us. You're not risking compliance issues by copying charts and mailing them to your collection agency, or copying charts and faxing them to your collection agency, or even copying charts and mailing them to your collection agency, all of which can be really sticky as far as compliance issues go. Data analytics is probably the neatest thing, I think, that this is more recent. Transworld, being as large as they are, has employed a team of data scientists. They've spent over 8 figures in developing a piece of software called CollectX, which is predictive analytics. It's artificial intelligence. But essentially, when an account goes into collections, they're run against this software, which is able to predict up to 83% accuracy who will and who won't pay. So recently, over the last 6 months or so, we've rescheduled all of our collectors so that they're working on the accounts that are most likely to pay first. And it's caused our collection percentage, even in the final stage of collections, to be now over 3 times the national average for collection. So data security, predictive analytics, compliance, all your best shot, I believe, with Transworld systems. So they give you, basically, for your patients, a progressive account resolution. Instead of sending statements all the way through, you're going to send that first statement. If they don't pay off of that first statement, Accelerator will take care of the first-party reminders for you. No more phone calls from your staff to patients asking for money, which I know is one of their favorite things to do. The ones who do not pay in the first phase would move into profit recovery for the third-party demands, and the few that make it past profit recovery move into collections. That's the only point at which it's based on a contingency or a percentage of what's collected. One other service that I wanted to talk about, because this is becoming more and more and more popular, I deal very heavily with the American Academy of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeons, and they have a terrible time with insurance because they have to file both medical and dental. But I'm finding even practices that just file one or the other are having problems with slow pay insurance. We've been accelerating claim resolution for clients for over 20 years, and we've learned that automation works on insurance companies just as well as it works on patients. But when an insurance company receives a third-party demand, we get a much higher priority than the practice does, for the simple fact that if they ignore a third-party demand, it can affect their rating for the next year. And so we know that by their bylaws, insurance companies are required, when they get a third-party demand on a claim, to escalate it to a supervisor and then have the supervisor contact the practice to resolve the claim. So when you have an insurance claim that goes, say, 30 days with no response, you can actually turn the insurance company over to Transworld Systems, and Transworld will send a very specialized series of demands to the insurance company. It basically says, after filing this claim on an approved claim form and in accordance with the provider procedure manual, our client has still not been paid. We've been asked to contact you on their behalf regarding the below referenced claim. Put in the claim up to 5 dates of service, and it's telling them stop stalling, either pay us or resolve the claim. Instead of your staff calling the insurance company and waiting on hold for interminable amounts of time while clerks, I think, pretend to look up your claims, you will begin receiving emails. Pardon me?
You're so cynical. They wouldn't do that.
I've done this for too long.
Yes.
You'll receive emails, phone calls, and letters from insurance company supervisors basically saying, okay, on this claim number, here's what we need to pay you. Or they may deny it, but if they deny it, then at least you'll know, and you can make it patient responsibility and move forward. All the checks from the insurance companies come directly back to you as the others do, and this costs you the exact same fixed fee as it costs to turn over a patient. So that's been a very, very increasingly popular service that Transworld Systems has been providing. Just wanted to make sure that we touched on that, because I know that is an issue for a lot of practices. At this point, I'm going to toss it back over to Felton to wrap up, and we'll be available to answer any questions.
Thank you, David, and thank you, everyone, for listening in. The key points to take away, I think, this art of managing risks of a data breach. How do you avoid data breach from happening? How do you reduce? And if you're going to retain risk, my sense is a certification that shows, right, that the collection agency that you're working with has taken the necessary steps and made the right investments in the technology to ensure your personal information or your data from your client is protected. Educating your clients on your payment policies, a call out on helping your clients forecast what to budget. Again, I went through open enrollment and I guessed wrong last year, 2016, going into 2017. But fortunately, the practice that I'm working with, they're going to help me estimate across my sons and the whole family what I should be budgeting. And I have to December 3rd to adjust that number. There's a defensible business case, I think, as David has highlighted, to outsource collections, $10 to $12 on average every time you contact the patient, and remaining in the core competencies. And as David walked us through, the 4 types of payers all require a different strategy or a different technique: the dutiful, the distracted, the disrespectful, and the deliberate. Listed some contact information to reach out to us, either on LinkedIn, David's email, our email is here, and we'd be pleased to work with you. And again, we're a veteran-owned business. And the final chart was just maybe next steps. So scheduling a follow-up discovery call. I think it's always, I've noticed that dentist practices will meet once a month and they'll talk about key issues impacting their business, impacting accounts receivable, but possibly pulling together a list of accounts that you have that are older than 30, 60, 90 days and having a conversation with which one of these programs would be the right for your practice, and also pulling together the total amount you've written off in financial year of 2016. The value there is that money that could have been considered a charge-off, there still may be an opportunity to collect some and return it back to your practice. Migrating to a new secure dental collection platform, I think we touched on enough data breach content early on. And for any AIM members that would like to follow up with us, we've listed some references or testimonials from other clients. We'll get this presentation back to Danny and back out to all of you, and extending a discount for any practices that would like to take a look at TSI for 2018. So thank you very much.
Let me just add that you can contact either Felton or myself. We would be happy to go over all of this online with you and talk specifics about your practice and what the potential upside for outsourcing your accounts receivable management would be, and we can get down to dollars and cents.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Felton, David, appreciate it. And yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing the references, the testimonials, and also the discount. Actually, I missed that, and appreciate you doing that without even me asking. And everybody, well, if you're a regular attendee, you know we'll be sending this information to you, so don't feel the need to furiously jot down that YouTube link. We will be sending this to you. Let's jump into questions, but I just want to share that first of all, I was blown away about the fact that you can go after insurance companies for non-payment. I think that alone probably you could have spent 5 minutes in this presentation and just saying that, and I think you're going to have a lot of people lining up to sign up, if for no other reason than just the satisfaction in knowing that you can rattle their cage. But I would like to ask you, first of all, how long has TSI been offering that ability to its clients?
For 20 years.
20 years. I didn't know that. And do you have any stats on success rate or anything like that?
No, but I can tell you a story. And this is
because, well, and before you do, they have more to lose than a consumer does. So I can only imagine that the success would be at least as good. But please share regale us with your story.
Well, just from a client of mine, this was not a dental client. This was actually a medical transport company that transported people back and forth to their medical office visits, primarily working with workers' comp. they called me and said, we are just about to close the doors because there's so much money that's owed to us by insurance companies, we don't have operating capital. And I said, well, I think I have an answer for that. So I came in, we talked, we got them signed up, and we started submitting claims for them to the insurance companies. I called about 2 months later and I said, how's it going? And they said, we haven't gotten any money at all. I said, it doesn't make any sense to me. So I went into their office, and as I sat down at the desk of the of the young lady who was doing it, I noticed she had this inbox that was stacked up to about 10 inches. And I said, what is all of that? And she said, oh, I don't know, it's mail. I haven't been able to get to it. I said, you realize what that is? That's insurance companies telling you what you need to do to get paid. So I said, before I leave, we're going through all of this, and we're gonna get the information back out to the insurance company.
Yeah,
so
sure. That was until then. That was the bottom of the stack. That was the stuff that they didn't want to have to open because it was always bad news.
The entire stack of mail was letters from insurance company supervisors saying, we need this, we need this, we need to change the code here, we need this. We got all of it out that day. And about 3 weeks later, I got a call from the owner of the business saying, hey, we're opening another location. Would you come? Would you come to our grand opening?
That's fantastic.
And, yeah. So
what a
really
great illustration. No, I mean, I didn't know you did that. I didn't know you could do that. I don't know why, but so, you know, obviously, and then this kind of speaks to the other comment I'll make before we jump into some questions. I know I shared with you that I was a client of TSI. And when I, you know, got reintroduced, I mean, we've known each other for a while, and you started talking about it. Oh yeah, I remember. Those are the guys with the paper vouchers that you tear off when you want to send someone to collections. You say, well, not exactly. You know, we're not.
It's been different a long time.
Well, and I'm really beyond impressed. Not only with the interface that you've got now, so that, you know, every client is truly in control and they know exactly, you know, what's going on, and they can kind of really customize, craft this to meet their own needs.
And it's
but I love how
you're security issue. Yeah.
Right, and it's all, you know, secure. But just how you're committed to learning and improving through the data and the analytics. I think that shows a real commitment to success and the success of your clients. And so I wanted to share that because I know you'd advanced, that the company had advanced in the last 20 years, but I had no idea how far. So that's great. Yeah, the first question was a comment. Love that you can go after insurance companies. Bravo. Okay. So
me too.
We'll yes, I think that's incredible.
After running a practice for 10 years, it gets a little personal.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's personal. That's right. Now it's financial too, for in your favor. Someone said, I love the reframing concept. It's all in the perspective. Felton touched upon that. Do you have any recommendations for dealing with denied claims? I guess here's the answer. I mean, a denied claim wouldn't be non-payment. So in terms of how you would reframe your communication with an insurance company, I guess was the question. Do you have any recommendations? And this was obviously submitted before before we heard about the fact that you can go after insurance companies, but this is a slightly different side of that.
From my consulting background, I think a number of things. One, you need to make sure that you're getting clean claims out and that your people are trained in coding. And so you minimize the amount of denials that you're going to have. You're always going to have them. It's a fact of life, an unfortunate fact of life. What I recommend to my practices, and this is from my consulting practice, is that you set a time limit. My practice would only deal with insurance companies for 90 days. I mean, unless it was a glaring error on our part. But if the insurance company kept giving us the runaround, we basically told the patient, you know, we do this as a service and we're working with them, but we'll only work with them for 90 days. And if they don't pay, I basically would tell them personally, I said, you're paying a lot of money to that insurance company to pay your claims. If I were you, I would find out why they're not paying.
That's right. Get them on your side. Exactly. Instead of
so we would work together. But
that's a perfect illustration of reframing.
Responsibility and
Yep. Dear patient,
we
how do
want-
we deal with this? Yeah, this is hurting both of us. Yeah.
I was in a dental practice yesterday that have been fighting with insurance companies on individual claims for over 9 months. That's unproductive.
It's
Totally
true.
unproductive.
Well, and the other benefit of being able to collect from insurance companies is that stack of papers was also, I think, a meal ticket to reducing future denied claims, because they're giving you instructions on what they need, and I can only believe that would aid, if you learn that and retain that information, you wouldn't repeat the same mistakes if they were mistakes twice.
We're also finding, and I still don't know how this happens, but when you submit claims electronically and you have proof that the claim was received, that they tell you, we didn't get it. But they do. So I give my clients some wording to put into a letter on their letterhead. If they have to resubmit a claim, they send it along with the resubmission. And essentially, in nicer words, it says, we're not playing this game with you anymore. We're working with TSI. They're going to make sure our claims get paid. It is amazing to see how many more of the claims the insurance companies actually get after they send that one time.
Yep.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they stop claiming that they didn't get the claims because they know they've got a fight on their hands.
Hey, Danny, this is Felton. I was going to share a use case. When we first founded Lab References, my father was looking at maybe introducing early detection of cancer inside dental practices. And I think that's where me and you first met, Danny, as well. And one thing I learned is that to the extent you can be proactive, so if there's a list of features or services that you offer in the dentistry field, and then working with each one of those carriers to understand up front which ones are likely to go through, right, and not have any denials in them. I noticed that Blue Cross Blue Shield, they issued something called a blue card for some services. And that was basically saying, we will pay for this service, and it's been done up front. So to the extent you can be proactive and map your features or services that you're offering to all the different insurance carriers, and building that relationship to have the conversation up front with, let's ask that question at the beginning of the conversation and not trying to recover it.
Very good. Thank you for that, Felton. What is the smallest package the practice can purchase?
I'll defer to Danny. David, excuse me.
Yeah.
I don't know that Danny knows that.
No, I would wing it, but
I mean,
not good.
Typically, the way that it works is a practice would purchase a number of accounts from us up front. Because we ask them to do that, we actually guarantee performance. So whatever the doctor invests with us, if we don't return double it, we'll pay him the difference in cash. Now, if you remember when I showed you the chart, our average return on investment in the first phase is 22 to 1. So guaranteeing 2 to 1 is not a big deal.
Nope.
They can get as many accounts as they need, but where it becomes cost effective is at the 50 account level. Now, when they purchase accounts from us, if they purchase up front, they have 2 years to use them. So if they're turning over 2 accounts a month, they'll use the 50 accounts in 2 years. An average single provider dental practice uses 250 accounts over the 2-year period, 10 accounts a month. That's average. But they can certainly start with less if, we'll make it work for them. There's also the ability to, it costs a little bit more, but there's the ability to not have to pay up front, where we can just bill them per account for each account that they use.
Very good. Sounds quite reasonable.
It's changed a little since the olden days when you were around.
Yeah, but I remember having to, it was actually quite a bit more costly. I think I had to buy 50 vouchers, if I recall correctly.
Right.
It was like $12.50 or more. Yeah. It was
We actually, and that's something else I will mention, and this is not generally known out there yet, so I guess I'm letting it out of the bag. Transworld is considering a price increase. We have not increased our prices in 4 years, which will probably happen in February. And I would also recommend, if you're gonna start doing collections, right now is probably the best time of year to start, because when you get those accounts submitted for collections, you stand a better chance of collecting them now. Before very long, that money that they owe you is going to wind up under Aunt Tilly's Christmas tree. And then in January, you know, everybody's paying their credit cards from Christmas, and then you wind up waiting till April when the tax refunds come back. So now's a great
definitely
time
a seasonal component. Yep, the collection.
Yep.
Yep. The CFPB has been in the news a bit lately. What, if anything, do you see by way of changing risk exposure owing to these possible changes? And I realize this is a big question that there's a lot of conjecture, but yeah,
I really do not think that the CFPB is helping much with the risk, and I would be very happy to see their role changed or eliminated.
Okay. Does Transworld report to the credit bureaus? I mean, when you get to that last phase, the deliberate, I suppose.
We can, if the client wants us to, but I will tell you that about 2 years ago, FICO changed the rules on how they compute credit scores, and medical and dental debt does not count against your credit score like it used to. In my opinion, it's probably not worth reporting to credit bureaus.
Well, that's interesting because, yeah, that's what I've heard. And I know that when I worked with Transworld, they didn't report. And I know, too, that, yeah, they changed as you just said, the rules. I was surprised to hear that. And I guess the reason is that medical billing is so confusing. And it is. I've got a stack of bills on my desk right now because I've had a lot of, physical therapy done. I want to pay, but it's almost like when you pay determines how much you pay because they're communicating with the insurance company, and if you pay too soon, then other things get covered. And I'm not stupid, but I'm confused. And I think, yeah, they don't do it. I just wonder if the typical consumer knows that. They
don't, and perception is reality. So if they think we're reporting their credit, it's just as effective as doing it.
Right. And I mean, that's why you named yourselves what you did, because it doesn't sound that dissimilar to TransUnion, which is one of the credit bureaus.
And we actually do have a new program now with TransUnion. This is unique to Transworld, but if we have an account in collections that goes dormant and we are unable to collect it for whatever reason, it's placed in the database at TransUnion, and if that person's credit score changes any, or they have any significant effect on their credit score, we're immediately notified and can reopen collections up until the statute of limitations. That's really increased.
Let me make sure I understand that. So if the person's FICO score changes, and it need not have anything to do with the fact that you reported them, then, so legally at I see, after the statute of limitations, you can't contact them, but once that changes, you can, even if for the better or the worse?
Well, no, we can do it up to the statute of limitations, which here in Georgia is 6 years. But let's say somebody turns you over, heaven forbid, and we can't collect it from you for one reason or another.
Okay.
We can't find you, or we can't collect it from you. And 2 years from now, you inherit some money, and you go out and buy a car. We know it, and we can reopen collection.
So the status has changed, that it's really a positive opportunity to open up that conversation again. So a new mortgage, a new car, maybe a new credit line, that opens up the opportunity.
On their credit score, we know about it. We're immediately notified by TransUnion, and we can reopen collection. That's really increased our ability to collect on some of those marginal accounts.
What fee does TSI get for collecting from the phase 4 accounts? Because you said it's not a flat fee. Is it a percentage?
It is a percentage in the final stage. It depends somewhat on the average balance. Typically it's 50%, and the reason it's 50% is because it's already been worked through 2 phases already, and we know the only accounts that make it there are the really tough accounts.
Yeah, it's going to be labor intensive.
Yeah, and
that's what it was when I worked with them, I remember.
And I always tell people you can't compare collection cost percentages, because 50% of a lot is a whole lot more than 80% of nothing.
Of nothing. and a very small percentage of the debts ever get to that fourth phase because of the technology that you employ.
Basically, what's more interesting than the cost percentage-wise is how much money do you get to put back in your bank account. That's what you want to look at, not the percentage cost.
That's a legitimate reframing of how to look at it, for sure.
It is, because, hey, we only paid, back when I ran a practice, we only paid the guy 30%. Of course, he didn't collect anything, so we didn't get anything back. I did have a doctor one time say, well, but I pay almost nothing for collection. And I said, Doc, you're paying a percentage, right? And he said, well, yeah, but I mean, I don't ever have to pay anything.
I never pay it, yeah.
But that's probably because they're not collecting anything. And he said, yeah, but it doesn't really cost me much.
I know. Look how much I'm saving. Yeah.
The cost of your collections is the amount of money that is not collected. That's the real cost of your collections.
That's right.
So you want to get somebody who's actually going to collect better than the national average.
All right, let's keep moving along. We've got a number of questions remaining. If a debtor gets an automated call, because this is how you presented it, and they press 1 to speak to someone, you said that call is forwarded to the team member, to the office, right?
Correct.
My concern would be, and the question is the team given some indication of who the caller is? Or are they going to be blindsided by somebody? Yeah, I was just told to press 1 to talk about my bill. And then they have to say, oh, hold on, who are you? Or do they get a whisper message? You know, how it just
typically what happens, and I always tell my clients this, is you're going to get some calls saying, hey, I just got a call from you guys. Don't say, no, you didn't.
Yeah, don't say that.
But typically people are going to call and say, hey, this is David Weiner. I just got a call from you guys. I'd like to pay my bill.
Okay. I suppose that's true.
Say, okay,
I mean,
you know, yeah. So that's never been an issue.
Okay, good. How secure is my data with you?
It's 100% secure.
Yeah, I think we
covered that, but
yes,
we take that very, very seriously. Which you should.
Yep. Oh, you mentioned a different protocol depending on whether the call is a landline or a cell number. Could you elaborate on what the protocols are, how they differ?
According to the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, one of the many, many regulations we have to pay attention to, an automatic dialer may not be used on a cell phone, period, for any reason. Most, if not all, collection agencies use automatic dialers. They have to because they can't get the volume of calls they need if they don't. And most of them, Felton mentioned that 60% of the phone numbers that we receive from medical and dental practices are cell numbers. You don't know it, but we've invested about over $1 million in software that will determine which ones are cell phone numbers. Those are all dialed by human beings and not by automatic dialers. In the collections end of it, because we have to make so many calls, we've actually hired a team of people in the Philippines. They're trained and employed by Transworld Systems. Their entire job is to manually dial phone numbers and then automatically transfer them to a U.S. collector. So we are 100% compliant, and we get the number of calls necessary.
Yeah, and if you're going to outsource telephone calling overseas, the Philippines is the place to do it. You got really good English skills.
And we're not outsourcing it. Those are American-trained Transworld Systems employees that work there, that are there.
And why is that? Just because of the, is it legal reasons or is it the cost, just the wage? Okay.
It's the cost. We needed to keep the cost down. And,
okay. Well, here's the question. I guess it's a reasonable question. How financially stable are you as a debt collection vendor?
We are, well, the largest collection agency in the world now, with 47 years of background and about 25,000 clients across the United States. We aren't going anywhere.
Well, you've been around for a long time. Like I said, shortly after I started my business, I retained you, and
And the one
it
thing
worked well.
I didn't mention, as far as we were talking about the CFPB and security and compliance, they measure the number of complaints that a collection agency receives based on the number of calls that we get and make. Our complaint percentage is 0.008%.
That's pretty amazing for a collection agency.
Yeah, yeah.
Really
We've
good.
also made the determination that medical and dental patients need to be treated differently than somebody who's late on their credit card. We need to be a lot more assistive and a lot less combative, maybe.
Yep, confrontational, right?
We
Sure.
come, yeah, we
benefit
come
of the doubt, right?
Yeah. Right. Well, they come to their doctor or their dentist because they have to, not because they want to. They build up their credit card because they want to. So we'll come alongside, try and help them find alternative funding methods if we need to. We'll kind of take an assistive approach with them so it's not a confrontation. They don't dread hearing from us. We're there to help them get their obligation taken care of and to benefit the practice that we work with.
I think it's a key distinction. You know, people think about collections and they think about hardball tactics, and it needn't and shouldn't be that way.
Yeah. And we're living down the reputation of some unscrupulous operators that have operated.
That's true, no doubt. Right. I mean, you know, basically, it's another business transaction, and collections is a fact of business life, and people, you know, it's a form of credit, frankly, and the key is to not extend too much free credit, but you know, get people back into compliance by applying not just technology, but interpersonal technology, you know, communication skills, which is what practice perfection is all about. You know, the remaining questions were asked early in the webcast, and I think have largely been answered. So well, I think we're good.
Let me tell you a quick story then, if we've got time.
Please go ahead.
How I got started working with Transworld Systems. I moved to the Atlanta area in 2005, was doing medical and dental consulting along with a couple of other things, and I was sitting in a restaurant booth having lunch, and I started eavesdropping on a booth behind me, which was a representative from Transworld demoing a doctor. And I listened to what the guy was saying, and my immediate reaction was, where in the world was this when I was running a practice? I'd have done this in a second. This is a no-brainer. So when they finished up, the doctor got up and excused himself and left. I went and sat in this guy's booth, and I said, tell me what you just told him. So he went through his overview with me. We talked for a few minutes, and I found out where his office was. I drove over there, and I walked into the office of his regional manager and said, my name's David Weiner, and I want to work with your company. And he looked at me, and we talked for a minute, and he said, okay. And the rest is history. For 10 years, I've been with Transworld Systems. And
history in the making. Yep.
History in the making. And I've got clients now in about 30 states.
Danny, this is Felton. I was doing some research ahead of the presentation, and I looked out on YouTube, and I was just trying to see where legal firms are starting to recruit, if you will, or try to get clients just to go after some consumer protection laws. So there are penalties that are involved if you do something the wrong way. It could be $1,000 or a $1,500 fine, but there's legal firms, and you probably see these ads late at night that run, and they basically say, if you've experienced this type of problem, we're here to maybe represent you.
Yep.
So
no fee unless we win.
Yes, sir.
Exactly right.
Yes, sir. And I think what my father taught me about the art of managing risks is that we can just focus on that first one of avoiding risk. So when I look at opportunities to use a dental collection platform that's in a hosted secure center, to me, that's the first step in avoiding risk. There's so many people that use mobile devices inside of practice, but if you don't have the ability to shut that, iPhone down if it gets lost or stolen, and to wipe it, if you will, or erase all the data that's on it, you can just open yourself up. Typically, when you go through a breach and you do a post-audit assessment, it's the weakest link in the chain that caused the breach, and it's usually an external connection or integration to a third party. So there's so many different applications that I see within the dental practice. but an audit to make sure that those connections are secure can avoid that potential breach.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. It's an extension of the practice's philosophy that it shares with its patients. It's an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I do appreciate the offer that both of you gentlemen are making for a discovery call where you can actually kind of help the attendees today sort of get a handle on what the potential is, what's the risk exposure, and what's the opportunity to accelerate cash flow, which is, you know, cash remains king for sure. So thanks for, yep. So I want to thank you again, gentlemen. That was a great presentation. It went remarkably fast. We are just about out of time, just enough time for me to let everyone know, remind them that in a few days you'll receive an email with instructions on how to receive your 1.5 hours of CE credit. You'll also receive contact information for today's panelists, or today's presenters, I should say, for Felton and David, and then it'll be a tough choice, but who to call? Guess it's who you enjoyed hearing from more.
You'll probably get both of us because we work together. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't think you'll lose either way. Now, owing to a busy travel schedule for yours truly, our next webcast will not be until Thursday, January 25th, 2018, our first webcast of the new year. Our very special guest presenter at that time will be Mr. Andy Jensen, who is the VP and Chief Marketing Officer of Curve Dental. Andy's going to lead a discussion on the cloud, what it is, why you should understand it, and how it can help you build the practice of your dreams. In the meantime, I want to again sincerely thank you, Felton and David, for a terrific presentation. And of course, as always, thank you, dear attendee, for your continued commitment to practice perfection. Goodbye, everybody.